Welcome to the public informational meeting for Project 155-176, intersection improvements at Bishop's Corner in the town of West Hartford. My name is Andrew Esposito. I work in the DOT's Highway Design Unit, and I'm the project engineer on this job. After the presentation, we'll have a question and answer session where you can send in your questions and comments through the Zoom Q&A feature. After the presentation, any questions and comments you have can still be sent in via phone and email until July 27th. On the screen, we have our project email address, which is dotproject0155-0176@ct.gov. The phone number you can call is 860-594-2020. Please note this is by voicemail only, so when you leave a voicemail, please reference project number 155-176 and leave your contact info if you want us to respond directly to you. We also have our project website, which is portal.ct.gov/West Hartford 155-176. This site has project information and all the contact information as well. Following the meeting, a recording of the presentation will be available on YouTube, and a link to that will be posted on the website. So let's get started with the presentation. On the agenda for tonight, I will run through the DOT representatives we have here. I'll go over more information on the meeting format. We'll go through some Title VI civil rights information, give a project overview, and discuss the existing and proposed conditions. Then go over rights-of-way information, as well as construction schedule and cost, and then conclude with the Q&A. With me this evening, we have Scott Bushy, the Highway Design Principal Engineer, Joe Arsenal, the project manager. My name is Andrew Esposito. I'm the project engineer. Tushar Gadi is the project designer. Colin Bomber is the traffic project manager. And Matt Giannakopoulos is our right-of-way coordinator. As I mentioned earlier, we will do questions and comments at the end of the presentation. We'll utilize the Zoom Q&A feature, and Joe Arsenal will moderate as questions and comments come in. The comment period will remain open until July 27th, and you can submit your comments and questions by email at dotproject0155-0176@ct.gov and by phone at 860-594-2020. And again, that phone number is voicemail only, so please reference project number 155-176 and leave your contact info if you would like a response. We won't get to respond to voicemails and emails tonight, but all those comments will get a response. For the Q&A session tonight, we will just be using the Zoom Q&A box. Our project webpage link is shown here, and that is portal.ct.gov/West Hartford 155-176. And again, that will have all project information, including contact information and a link to the recording of this presentation. To use the Zoom Q&A chat box, select the Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom window and type in your question or comment in the dialog box that appears, and then just click enter. To view captions and subtitles in Zoom, go to the bottom of the Zoom window, click the Show Captions button and navigate to Speaking Language and choose your preferred language. Closed captioning will be available on the YouTube recording after tonight's presentation. Title VI, your civil rights. No person shall, on the basis of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation or subject to discrimination in the development of this project. There's a voluntary survey that you may complete after the meeting. To access the survey, you can use the QR code on the screen, and we will also post the link to the survey and the civil rights information in the chat. Again, a recording of this presentation will be posted to YouTube after tonight's event. This slide contains more information on Title VI, including where to get information about the Connecticut DOT Civil Rights Program and how to file a complaint. This information on the slide can be accessed via the link posted in the chat or by calling 860-594-2169. Okay, now jumping into project information. This is a map of West Hartford, and the project location is circled on the screen. It is located at Bishop's Corner in West Hartford, which is the intersection of Route 44, Route 218, and North Main Street. This area is well developed with commercial and retail space. 3 of the 4 corners at this intersection have gas stations on them, depicted by the blue areas. And then we have the shopping centers and office buildings highlighted here in red, with all the parking spaces surrounding them. All legs of this intersection have a posted speed limit of 35 miles an hour. Route 44 has an average daily traffic of 22,800 vehicles. Route 218 has an average daily traffic of 17,400 vehicles. And North Main Street, which is a local road, has an average daily traffic of 14,200 vehicles. This is the existing layout of the intersection. It's a 4-legged signalized intersection. There are 4 islands outlined in red. The traffic signal support poles are called out on the screen. 2 of the poles, the northwest and southeast poles, are located in the islands. All the pedestrian push buttons to activate the pedestrian crossing signal are also located within these islands. All legs of the intersection currently have a left turn lane, represented by the orange arrows, 2 through lanes represented by the blue arrows, and channelized right turn lanes, which form the pedestrian islands, represented by the red arrows. The channelized right turn lanes are a big component of this project. Drivers tend to focus on vehicles they need to yield to, which may leave pedestrians waiting to cross to the islands unnoticed. There have been pedestrian-involved crashes recorded over the years, not only at the intersection crosswalks, but also at driveways and between intersections. We will continue to work with the town of West Hartford to investigate reducing these conflict points, and the aim of our design is to make the intersection operate more efficiently so that pedestrians don't find the need to cross between intersections. The existing signal allows for actuated concurrent pedestrian phases with the through movements, which means pedestrians get the signal to cross the intersection in the same direction as the vehicles with the green light traveling through the intersection. However, as I mentioned earlier, all pedestrian push buttons are located in the islands. So a pedestrian must cross the unprotected channelized right turn lane, push the button and wait on the island, and when they get the pedestrian signal, they can then cross to the other island where they need to cross another unprotected channelized right turn lane. The Bishop's Corner Neighborhood Association and the town have received complaints from pedestrians who use the intersection, saying that crossing the intersection is difficult and confusing. They've complained that the crossings to the islands are unsignalized and motorists do not yield to pedestrians crossing the channelized right turn lanes, which Tushar and I have experienced firsthand during our field investigations. They have also complained about islands being in rough shape. These are street level photos of each island in the intersection. As I said previously, pedestrians must wait in these islands for the signal to cross the roadway. This leaves them stranded between moving vehicles. The islands are small and crowded with signs and signal equipment. These islands are subject to vehicle hits when large trucks are turning. Some pedestrian ramps are not ADA compliant, and the 2 pictures outlined in red, the northwest corner and southeast corner, are largely made up of bituminous concrete, causing them to blend in with the surrounding roadway. This is some background information on the initiation of this project. The project was assigned to the DOT's Project Development Unit after a safety audit was completed at the request of the town of West Hartford, and the audit aimed to highlight deficiencies at the intersection of Route 44 and North Main Street. The Project Development Unit met with the town of West Hartford and the Bishop's Corner Neighborhood Association several times between 2018 and 2019 to discuss alternatives that would address West Hartford's and the Bishop's Corner Neighborhood Association's concerns with the intersection. These are some of the alternatives discussed. Alternative 1 was a minimalist approach where 3 of the islands would have been rebuilt out of concrete and signal equipment at the intersection would have been upgraded. However, it would still leave channelized right turn lanes, which would not be ideal for pedestrian mobility. Alternative 2 removed all the pedestrian islands and implemented a second exclusive left turn lane on North Main Street, but was ultimately dismissed due to the high right-of-way costs and impacts to business parking spaces. Alternative 3 also removed all the pedestrian islands and eliminated all exclusive right turn lanes, except for the right turn lane on Route 44 coming from Avon turning south onto North Main Street. This provided shorter crossing distances for pedestrians, but the reduction in lanes would result in worse vehicle congestion. Alternative 4 combines the benefits of Alternative 2 and 3 and was chosen as the preferred alternative by the DOT, the Town of West Hartford, and the Bishop's Corner Neighborhood Association. This concept was given to the Highway Design Unit and is what the preliminary design we are presenting to you tonight was based on. So now I'm going to hand it off to Tushar to talk about this proposed design.
Thanks, Andrew. Hello, everyone. My name is Tushar Gadi. I'm the project designer, and I'm going to go over the proposed changes. Based on the safety audit completed in the early stages of this project and concerns from the town of West Hartford, the goal of this design is to improve pedestrian mobility and overall operations at Bishop's Corner intersection. This is an overall view of the project. The project limit starts from the intersection of Route 44 at Route 218. It extends 450 feet to the north on Route 218, 650 to the east on Route 44 at Starkell Road, 250 feet to the south on North Main Street, and 500 feet to the west on Route 44 at Staples Driveway. The current project limits are subject to change to include other intersections as we approach the final design phase. The project will be repaved throughout these limits. We will be working with the town of West Hartford and our landscaping unit to determine the best treatment for the splitter island on the western leg of Route 44. The biggest change we're proposing is removing the 4 refuge islands in the center. This will have an impact on crosswalks and lane configuration. There will no longer be a channelized right turn lane at each leg. For cars headed southbound on Route 218, the exclusive right turn lane turning into Route 44 towards Avon will remain. For cars headed eastbound on Route 44, the exclusive right turn lane will remain coming from Avon going to North Main Street. For cars heading northbound on North Main Street, we're proposing to change the exclusive right turn lane to a combined through right turn lane. For Route 44 westbound, we're currently proposing a combined through right lane, but we're still investigating the benefits of having the through right versus keeping the exclusive right turn lane. We'll also be working with the town of West Hartford to reduce the cut-through traffic on Starkell Road. New ADA-compliant sidewalk ramps will be installed to line up with the new crosswalks. We'll also be installing new traffic signals and new pedestrian signal equipment at the intersection. For the proposed traffic signals, we'll be installing black mast arms similar to the decorative signal equipment located at other intersections in West Hartford. With the refuge islands removed, we can simplify the crosswalks of this intersections for pedestrians. They no longer have to cross a channelized right turn lane to cross the street, and the distance they need to walk is much shorter than before. There's a 45-foot reduction on the east, 60-foot reduction on the south, 40-foot reduction on the west, and a 45-foot reduction on the north side. The project is currently in its early stages of design, and we haven't begun the drainage analysis at this point. The proposed project will include upgrading the system to address deficiencies and will include installing new drainage pipes and catch basins to bring the system up to current standards to minimize flooding on the roadway. We'll be re-implementing concurrent pedestrian phasing in this intersection. When cars going north and southbound on North Main Street and Route 218 get a green light, pedestrians are also allowed to cross the crosswalk in the direction shown in the orange arrows. We're implementing additional safety measures such as lead pedestrian interval, which gives pedestrians a 4-second head start to cross the intersection. We'll also be installing yield to pedestrian signs that are shown on the screen here for vehicles turning right onto Route 44 needing to yield to pedestrians. Currently, we have no utility pole impacts. Underground utilities may be impacted by the drainage modifications, but will not be known until we progress our drainage design. During the construction of this project, we have no anticipated road closures and business driveway access will be maintained throughout. We're currently anticipating one small partial land acquisition and some minor rights and easements will be needed for sidewalk work and grading. And now I'm going to hand it off to Matt Giannakopoulos to talk more about rights-of-way.
I am Matt Giannakopoulos, and I am a right-of-way coordinator with the Department's Division of Rights-of-Way. It is our office's responsibility to acquire the property rights needed for transportation projects. The proposed project design requires the acquisition of property rights, so I'd like to give a brief overview of the Department's right-of-way acquisition process. Please keep in mind, though, that the specific impacts are still being fine-tuned and may change as the design progresses. Any property rights that will be acquired in accordance with Connecticut General Statutes sections 13A-73 and 13A-98E. And whenever there is federal money used in any phase of a project, the department must adhere to the Uniform Relocation Assistance and Real Properties Acquisition Policies Act of 1970 as amended. Once the design has moved to the point where we are ready to begin the acquisition process, each affected property owner will receive a formal letter of intent to acquire from our office, along with a property map which depicts the exact property rights to be acquired. At that point, our office will determine the fair market value of those property rights and use that value to establish an offer of just compensation. The offer will be sent out to the owner in writing, and a right-of-way agent will be available to meet with the property owners and explain the project, go over the specific impacts to the property, and explain how the state developed its offer. The property owner will have a reasonable time to consider the state's offer and enter into negotiations. If an agreement is reached, the state will prepare all the necessary paperwork and record the deed and the property map on the town land records. However, if negotiations reach an impasse, in order to keep everything on schedule, the department may acquire the necessary property rights through its power of eminent domain. In that event, the state files a notice of condemnation in Superior Court along with a monetary deposit in the amount of the state's offer. The property owner will have 6 months from that date to appeal for a reassessment of the damages if they thought the state's offer was inadequate. Now, whether or not the owner chooses to use their right to appeal, the money that was deposited in the court is available to be withdrawn by the owner at any time, subject to the discretion of the Superior Court. I know sometimes people think when they hear eminent domain that it means the state just takes their property for $1, but that's not the case. The owners are entitled to at least the amount of the state's offer, and the state only takes title to the property rights that are needed for the project. If there are any questions regarding the department's right-of-way acquisition process, I'd be happy to address them during the Q&A portion of tonight's meeting.
Thanks, Matt. Now we're going to finish it off with schedule and cost. We have design approval on August 23rd of this year. The design completion date is in January of 2025, and the notice to proceed is in July of 2025. We expect the construction to last approximately 18 months, and the estimated construction cost is approximately $5.5 million. So that's the end of the presentation, and I am going to pass it over to Joe to start the Q&A session. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Andrew. So again, my name is Joe Arsenal. I'm the project manager, and I work in highway design alongside Andrew and Tushar, who you heard from earlier. So for the Q&A, what we're going to have you do tonight is you should see a button labeled Q&A at the bottom of your screen. If you've got any comments or questions you want to get in, simply click that, and then you'll be able to type your comment or question into the text box that pops up. So I could already see we got some questions coming in, so we're going to do our best to answer these as they come in, and might have Andrew and these other guys help me out. All right, so this first question I see is from Jay, and it says, what is the upper limit for ADT to consider a road diet? So Andrew, maybe you can hop on and help answer this concern.
Yeah. So I think the question is, what is the? So I'm reading that as the upper. What's that?
I was going to say, just for everyone on the call, ADT stands for average daily traffic. So I think what Jay is getting at here is, how much traffic can we have while implementing a road diet, which would be, I guess, reducing the number of lanes on the roadway.
Right. I don't have a upper threshold for what our average daily traffic would be to consider that. 44 though, if you remember that earlier slide, this is one of the heavier roads we have. That's, not an interstate. So reducing the number of lanes in any of the traffic analysis we did resulted in, a pretty high level of congestion for this intersection. So I think that kind of limited our ability to reduce the number of lanes in this area. Tushar described kind of how we reduced some of the lane arrangements, maybe took away an exclusive right and made it a through right. We were able to do that on the lanes that had the least amount of right turns in that instance. But in terms of eliminating through movements, most of them tend to be pretty heavy for both vehicles traveling from the southern portion of West Hartford, traveling north up to Bloomfield, and traveling back and forth between Avon and Hartford on Route 44.
All right, thanks, Andrew. The next comment I see here is relating to bicyclists. It says, what is being done to make the intersection safer for cyclists? Can bike lanes be added, in particular on Main Street, going north and south? Andrew, can you provide some insight on that?
Yeah, so going north and south. So right now on North Main Street, West Hartford has a painted shared use lane. We're fighting for space out there as it is. It's not too far north of the intersection that you do kind of lanes merge together. So what we've tried to do with some of the combination of through and right turn lanes is provide wider shoulders. In a lot of areas in this intersection, there's under a foot. We're trying to increase that wherever we can. It's difficult, as I mentioned earlier. It's a built-up area. There's not much room to push the edge of road out, and we don't want to, reduce the number of lanes either in most instances. So we're trying to make the shoulders wider wherever we can to kind of accommodate, make cyclists feel a little more comfortable.
Yeah, and it's certainly a difficult area for bicyclists. We recognize that. I'm actually planning on trying to attend the Bike West Hartford meeting, which I believe is going to be this Saturday. I believe over on off Fenn Road. I'm going to try to make it out there, bring some plans, and certainly would encourage any feedback or attendance from anyone. But yeah, thanks for the comment. And the next question I see here is, will there be utility impacts during construction? Andrew, I think you're muted.
Yeah, I can take that too. Yeah, so there's not a lot of overhead utilities going through the intersection, which is a good thing. So there should be no overhead impacts. There's plenty of underground utilities in the middle of the intersection, and our drainage may impact that in the coming months as we move out of the preliminary design phase and into the final design phase and fine tune our conceptual drainage layout. We'll reach out to the utility companies, get test pits dug, and kind of see if our system can avoid any conflicts. But there may be some minor relocations necessary. So that'll all be hashed out later in the final design.
Okay, the next question we have is there any consideration to limiting left turns into the Whole Foods parking lot prior to the dedicated lane? I believe this participant is talking about is vehicles traveling southbound on North Main Street and going into Whole Foods. So North Main Street in that area is a town road. And I'm not sure how we could accomplish limiting the lefts there. There might be tools we could use, like placing an island in there or reconfiguring that entrance. But we'll certainly take a look at that suggestion and talk to our traffic people and see if there's anything we can do. Also coordinate with the town officials to address any issues at that at that driveway. So thanks for the comment. All right, our next question here is, will there be added priority for pedestrians on the crosswalk from Sims Road to McDonald's parking lot? And maybe Andrew, maybe you could pull up the aerial and make sure we can kind of go over there and zoom in on that location.
Yeah. So we're looking at this intersection over here, or
Yeah, correct.
yeah. So the question was, we're looking to give priority for pedestrians on the crosswalk because Sims Road out of McDonald's parking lot. That's certainly something we can look at. I'm not sure priority over what. They'll have an actuated phase for sure. And we can kind of take a closer look at those pedestrian movements.
Yeah, and maybe the individual here is speaking to maybe providing a leading pedestrian interval, maybe getting them out of the intersection first. You know, and up to this point, we haven't really included a full investigation at that intersection. It's something we've gotten some comments in over the past few days. We've started to have some conversations internally about. So we're going to have some discussions with our team and management, and also with the town, to see, what opportunities we have over there to make things flow better traffic wise, and also for the pedestrians. It is kind of a funky configuration there with Flag Road coming in so close to 44, and then Sims Road right there, limited area to store vehicles at that light for sure. It's something we're going to be looking into moving forward, and certainly we'll be considering upgrading the pedestrian amenities in that area as well. Now, the next question we have is, why is the state not using no right turn when walk light is illuminated instead of a yield option? I'm actually going to see maybe if Colin, maybe you could chime in on this. Colin is our traffic engineer. He might be able to provide some insight on that.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Colin Bomber. So yeah, I think the question is about the no yield to peds, and that's our state statute in Connecticut. And you'll see all our signs at various crosswalks. When we say, drivers must yield to pedestrians, and that's how our state statute's written. Other states are written differently, where they say vehicles must stop for pedestrians. I think that's where that question's coming from. So hopefully that explains it. And the other thing I did want to mention too is we're also, in addition to those overhead signs that will light up during that concurrent pedestrian phase and kind of alert drivers, hey, there's somebody crossing the crosswalk. The sign's only going to light up when a ped's there and pushes the button. The opposing phases will have the ability to also do illuminated no turn on red signs. As everyone knows, a lot of drivers kind of roll through red lights and make their turns on red. So that's another safety countermeasure we're looking into providing to help increase safety for pedestrians crossing. So hopefully that answers the question for you.
Thanks, Colin. And I think we have actually another question here that you might be able to help us out with. So yeah, this question says, instead of eliminating channelized right turn lanes, why not signalize pedestrian crossings to the islands? So I think he's talking about why not introduce a protected pedestrian crossing with the pedestrian head to cross these channelized right turns.
So yeah, I don't know how much that was considered back when the project was initially scoped. It certainly could be an option, but you'd still be left with the longer pedestrian crossings. And then unfortunately, I don't think, the balance of the vehicles and the pedestrians in this intersection, I don't think we could give one enough time for a ped to make it the crossing all the way across the street. They probably have to have 3 separate trips from sidewalk to island, then wait island to island, and then finally island to sidewalk, because we give too much time to pedestrians. Unfortunately, it really backs up traffic on Route 44 North Main Street. So those are probably the biggest reasons why that, it's a possibility, and we could certainly look into it a little further, but it's certainly not a recommended project that we have in front of everyone tonight.
Great, thanks, Tom. So our next question here is from Jay again, asking, was a Route 44 road diet considered? And it really wasn't considered at this location. I think that goes back to your original question about average daily traffic, and actually Colin was able to get some info over to us in the meantime here, and it says that federal highway guidance calls for an ADT of 10,000 or below, and generally we just don't do road diets that are experiencing congestion or high amount of traffic. It's usually an application we use in areas where there's low traffic but a lot of pavement, a lot of unused pavement, and that's not really the case here, especially in the area of the intersection. All that pavement's definitely getting used. All those lanes are very critical to making the intersection flow and function properly. Okay, move on to the next question here from Suzanne, and it says, I am a driver, a pedestrian, and bicyclist. There is currently no shoulder for my bike. I must ride on the sidewalk and then walk my bike as a pedestrian. What is the plan? I think we hit on this a little earlier. Andrew, you care to elaborate a little more on our situation here? And
yeah, like you said, it's tough. We're trying to get all the shoulder space where we can. Our bicyclist and pedestrian unit had looked at this early in the planning process, and again, as we ramped up our preliminary design, and they asked the same thing, like, can we get any more shoulder space out here? They're like, we understand it's tight. The parking lots certainly don't help. One possibility that was thrown out was maybe even because the intersection is so congested, it is, as the shoulders come in, get the space where we can, possibly include a bike ramp up onto the sidewalk. And that's something we're still, trying to explore, is how we can accommodate all the modes of transportation.
yeah, we're really just trying to find the best balance for everyone out here. And unfortunately, it's a very heavily traveled intersection with a lot of traffic, a lot of aggressive driving. So, even if we had the space to incorporate some bike lanes, I think it still would be treacherous for bikes to get across. In the end, it might be that the best option is for bikes to dismount, get on that sidewalk, and use those crossings that are more protected. We're certainly willing to have additional conversations about bike accommodations in the area. And again, like I mentioned earlier, I plan on going out to the West Hartford meeting on Saturday and have further discussions about that. Okay, thanks again. The next question we have is, I'm concerned about the removal of the right-hand turn from North Main to Albany Ave. Why is this being removed? Maybe Andrew, maybe you could pull up that zoomed in image of our intersection.
The proposed, or you want the
Yeah, I think the proposed. We might have to go back between existing and proposed. I'm not sure if we can do that on here, but I think one of the reasons, well, Andrew is kind of pulling the images up, is right now today, I believe we're talking about the southern leg of the intersection, so traveling northbound on North Main Street, taking that right. Right now, there really isn't much of a right turn storage lane. kind of peels off quickly into that channelized right turn. And it doesn't really have the storage and the effect of a proper right turn lane. And maybe Colin could speak a little more to this as far as traffic volumes go in that area.
Yeah, but a number of right turns for the northbound movement was on the lower end, like the Route 44 eastbound right turn onto North Main Street was much heavier. So that's one of the reasons why the team felt we needed to keep that right turn lane. And then, so just to clarify too, it's we'll still keep the ability to turn right. It's just the turn lane that is going to be, well, at least proposed to be removed at the moment where the project's at. And yeah, like Joe said, just a lot of times when there's only one or two vehicles in that through lane today, that access to the current channelized turn lane is blocked, and so it's not functioning as well as the other ones are at the intersection. So that all plays a part of that decision.
So the next question we have is, will there be traffic cameras at this intersection? Notification of such may be even more effective in creating safer passage. So Colin, I don't know if you could speak to this a bit. I know we'll have cameras to detect vehicles, but I believe this individual is speaking to like actually videotaping traffic. And I don't think at this point that's part of that proposal.
Correct. Yep, our standard will use cameras and sometimes radar detectors to actually detect vehicles and but for traffic signals, when to turn on the next phase, how much time we can extend the green time for the signal. And so those are pretty standard. And in terms of like maybe a red light running camera or anything that actually records, those aren't currently being proposed. And I don't believe we have the ability to use that for the state statutes, although I think they're looking into changing that. And I know recently we have a pilot with some of our work zone, a separate topic, our highways, speeding is a huge issue. So we have a pilot with automated cameras and works on speeding enforcement. So that might be coming in the future, but that's something that would have to be decided, at the state legislature level to kind of even approve that or not.
Great, thanks, Colin. The next question we have is relating to bikes again. It's from Michael. It says, as someone who lives in the affected area, enjoys biking a lot, is there any provision for bike lanes? And we've been over this topic, I guess, a couple of times now. It definitely seems like there is a lot of interest in bike accommodations at this location. So I think moving forward, we're going to have to engage with the bike groups out there. Maybe have some special stakeholder outreach meetings. Certainly reach out to those of you who mentioned bikes on this call if we can. If you want to send in your contact info, we'll try to meet up with you. And yeah, I think it'd be a good plan to meet with these groups and lay out some options for better accommodating bikes at this intersection for sure. Okay. Next question is, will there be any expected closures to the plaza entrances, especially the northeast corner? Andrew, maybe you could speak to that concern.
Yeah. Construction activities, they're not going to be allowed to block your driveway entrance. If they need to, it'd be for a very short amount of time. They'd have to coordinate with you ahead of time. It will occur, like for instance, all driveway aprons within the project limits, you're going to get a new driveway apron. So for that period of time, the driveway would be closed just to complete, paving. But other than that, if there is some type of activity that needs to happen right in front of your driveway, they should be coordinating with you and making other accommodations so that you're not completely cut off.
All right, moving right along here, we got a comment from William. I know the only concern of this is pedestrians. The traffic patterns at all of Bishop's Corner are poor and dangerous. I know the Fed money has something to do with this, but why are we making this safer for cars and then occupants who far outnumber the pedestrians? Andrew, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, there is a focus on pedestrian movements through the intersection, but we're also trying to improve the efficiency of the intersection overall. If we can kind of eliminate any pedestrian conflicts, that helps efficiency. We're looking at signal timings and what we call level of service, but essentially the efficiency of the entire intersection as a whole, closely with Colin. And we're trying to, make it better than it is today. Joe touched on it earlier. It's a balancing act, but we think we have, options to better improve the congestion as well, especially at least in the long term.
Right.
I just jump in too.
Yeah.
Providing a new traffic signal, we will have some of our latest and greatest features like retroreflective backplates and even just putting the signal on mast arms. It's currently on a span wire. It makes it more visible. So those we do consider, safety improvement for motorists. And even, from being out here in the field, what I've experienced, the toughest queue I've seen is the left turn from North Main Street onto Route 44, headed out towards Avon. And one of the reasons I've seen is a lot of people going southbound on North Main use that channelized island kind of as a free flow right. And then you've got the two movements coming together, and it's tight through there, and there's some near misses. So I think the removal of those channelized islands are actually going to have a good impact on the operations at the intersection, kind of unintended positive impact. So something I'm personally looking forward to out there.
Great, thanks, Paul. Okay, moving along. The next comment I have here is from Michael. It says, I live on the first property on Flag Road, close to the project. I am wholeheartedly in favor of removing the right turn channel lanes. They are super dangerous for pedestrian. I do question whether the walk lights will come automatically, even if no one pushes the walk button. I think that's a question for you. I'm pretty sure the answer is no, but maybe you could just confirm that.
So the way we'll have it is that the walk indications and the phase will only turn on when the button's actually pressed, and it doesn't come on automatically. Certainly bigger cities like New York City will come on all the time, but that's our practice, is to have it actually only come on when it's pushed, and then hopefully that's just a better cue to motorists out there that they see that and they know someone's going to be in the intersection, and they can look for them and yield to them as needed.
Very good. All right, our next comment here is, how are we planning on accommodating bicycle use? So again, we see that many concerns are coming in about bike use out here. It is a very difficult intersection. I think our best path forward right now is going to be to reach out to the bike groups in town, discuss any accommodations we can incorporate into this project, and have some discussions definitely with the West Hartford Town engineers and community development office. So thank you, Stephanie. All right, moving right along. Our next comment here is from Nick. He's saying, this seems inadequate to address problems with the intersection. You are still asking pedestrians to cross 6 lanes. Why not continue the road diet that is working very well from North Main? Yeah, I think maybe Colin might be able to help me out a little with this one. I think it really boils down to the number of vehicles we have, using this intersection. Any reduction in lanes will just further those traffic backups on all of the approach legs. And, you know, again, we're just trying to find the best balance we possibly can here to allow for pedestrians to cross safely while also accommodating all that traffic. I don't know, Colin, you have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, that's hit the nail on the head. And just south of this intersection, the road diet, it is working well. And but when we get up to the Route 44, but the volume of traffic on Route 44 is going to make it tough for us. If we did reduce the lanes any further, it's going to really start to impact queues and congestion on all approaches, because there's only so much we can do with the number of lanes we can have today. So that's just the primary consideration is, we were able to kind of squeeze down, reduce to the right turn lanes. So it's a partial road diet, if you will, but any more than that, and it'd be a much more severe impact to traffic operations.
Right. All right, thanks. Our next comment here is asking, will we be adjusting the left turn lane or light on Route 44 at the Staples Sims Road intersection? And we hit on that a little earlier in the conversation here. We have been getting comments, and even before tonight's meeting, with concerns at that intersection, and there's definitely some problems over there, and we'll absolutely be having conversations with the town moving forward, see what we could possibly do over there to improve the geometry and access to paths. So, yeah, we'll definitely be looking at that moving forward. Our next comment is from Liz. My concern is with Sims Road, intersection with Flag Road, including the pedestrian crosswalk. My entire patient here doesn't fit too many roads. Okay. Yeah, so I think, kind of with the bikes, we're getting a lot of concerns in about that intersection over there to the west. So moving forward, we'll certainly be looking at that and coordinating with the town. Thanks, Liz. The next comment we have is, did you say that the project will not impact current traffic flow? If not, would you elaborate? Do you anticipate any slowdowns that would prolong the project period? If so, would you elaborate? I think she's alluded to construction operations, Andrew. Maybe you could speak to that a little more as far as building lanes and potential impact.
Yeah, during construction, and actually that's a good question. It's something we didn't touch on. A few months ago, we went, the MDC had a public info meeting we went to a little while ago. Night construction, given the high congestion or high volumes in this intersection, is still on the table, especially given that most of the surrounding properties are commercial, so they're not going to be operating at night. There are still residential properties nearby, so we definitely want to be sensitive to that. So that's going to be something we look into further to try to avoid construction that's going to cause slowdowns during the day. But we also don't want the construction to be hammering away all night long for 18 months. So that's something we'll look into, balance, and the contractor will have specifications on when they can and can't work. During the day, Colin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, given the high volumes, usually we're allowed to go to alternating one-way traffic on a lot of these roadways. The volumes are so high, that won't be the case here. We're going to be trying to move vehicles through as efficiently as possible while the contractor's out there working.
Yep, that's correct. There might be a few hours during the day they can, take one lane at a time, but the volumes are a little lower. But certainly during the peak periods, we're going to need basically all the lanes open as much as we can get to keep traffic moving during construction.
All right, thanks, guys. Our next question here is, what are the widths of the travel lanes in the preferred alternative from Jay? And Andrew, I think you might be able to speak to that. I think we're trying to meet. We have standard lane widths for our highway design manual, and I believe we're meeting all those lane widths
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So for all through lanes, or combined through rights, we're going to do 11 feet. And then if there's turn only lanes, those we can narrow down to 10 feet. And those are both on the narrow end of our standards. Like I said earlier, we're trying to squeeze out every inch we can get on those shoulders.
Okay, let's see. I can get another question here. So won't the right turning on Albany Ave going north, coming from the east, be slowed if that right-hand lane isn't purely for right turns? Also, the merge of two lanes going north through the intersection is dangerous. Why not make them two northbound lanes with the right lane only for cars turning into the gas station in the big wide lot? I think we can handle that in two parts. I think the first part is talking about where we currently have a dedicated right turn lane coming from the east from West Hartford and turning out to 218. And I think one of the reasons we converted that to a combined right through lane was to gain some shoulder space over there, which we did. But we also have, we've been talking about that internally. There is some benefit to maintaining that right turn lane. Colin, can you speak to that a little? I think the volumes are kind of on the edge of that being necessary.
Yeah, so as it is proposed, it certainly would add a few seconds more delay, average per vehicle to those drivers, which typically the DOT never does. We're always trying to historically and through my 15 years with the department, everything's been focusing so much on and everything's improving operations for vehicles. So we're taking a different approach and a more complete streets minded was the thought of can we get away with reducing that and it's still an acceptable level. It's only going to be a couple of seconds delay per person, so at least we define it as that would be acceptable. But at the same time, there's enough turning volume and merit to the idea that I think we'll keep that in mind and work with the town. And we could put the right turn lane back in and and kind of get it back to basically how it's operating today. Is something we can keep exploring.
Right, good, Colin. And so the other part of the question, I think, is alluding to the two lanes heading northbound on 218. And I think they're asking if that rightmost lane could be just turned into a dedicated right turn lane for the gas station in Big Y. And that's an interesting idea. I don't know that we investigated that. I'm wondering if due to the number of through vehicles we have traveling northbound there. Andrew, I don't know if you could zoom out, we could better look at that location specifically.
Yeah, actually, let me see if I can pull over a PDF of that. So I believe we're talking through here and then around the corner, or might.
Yeah, I think once they're around the corner, how those two lanes merge into one, kind of right at the intersection, right at the driveway for Big Y. I think they're wondering if we could just extend that right lane and make that dedicated right into the parking lot there.
Right.
Our road width does get choked down a little bit up by that driveway. That might be one of the constraints there. Colin, do you have any thoughts on if that's something we could pursue, look at?
Yeah, that's it's something that we could consider it. It's a little tough because sometimes when you do that, and we also term it a lane trap, because then people end up in that lane when they don't want to turn into the Big Y or the gas station, then they have to merge in, but then the rest of the through vehicles in the other through lane, aren't expecting them to merge. So it's a potential safety concern. So, but it's something we can kind of look into further. Because I think today it kind of almost operates as a a lot of people use that as a turning lane into the Big Black Plaza. So it's something we can take a look into a little bit more.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thanks, Colin. Yeah, it's definitely worth a second look, and yeah, we appreciate the comment. Thanks. All right, our next question here: will the lights cycle automatically 24/7, or will there be priority for Route 44 green light if there's no one waiting at the intersection coming off North Main Street? Colin, you have any thoughts on that?
So yeah, like kind of a late at night time period when maybe the traffic volume is a lot lower, the signal would kind of stay in green for Route 44, until any, pedestrians or vehicles, pull up to the North Main Street approaches. So that answers the question. It would stay the green for Route 44.
Okay. Another question here, comment from Stephanie. She says, please do not leave bicycles out of the project here, and even more pertinent, please do not think that painted lines will achieve anything. By the way, feeling more comfortable about biking is not the goal. It is the actual reality of being better protected. This is not a mental health issue. It is a public health one. Thanks for the comment, Stephanie. And yeah, I think we definitely would want to engage with you and the bike groups moving forward. So we appreciate your involvement and looking forward to the ongoing coordination. Thanks. The next question we have is, why is the cost over $5 million for what appears to be minor improvements? Andrew, maybe you could speak a little to how the cost works on this kind of project like this.
Yeah, so it's a lot of, I mean, it may not look like it in the zoomed in picture, but if we zoom out, I mean, it's a decent sized intersection. We extend the paving limits far out to accommodate the new lane arrangements. Paving is expensive. We have plenty of drainage work in the intersection that needs to be reconfigured as part of the new geometry. There's anticipated underground utility work in there. Traffic signal equipment can be expensive. It is a preliminary estimate as we kind of fine tune the extent of the project. That's kind of how we come up with that number. We're redoing a lot of the sidewalk in this area. So all that put together, and that's kind of how we landed on that. Those big ticket items, just resurfacing the entire area, the costs add up. But this is not a high number for an intersection job like this.
Great, thanks. All right, the next question we have here is from Sarah. She's asked, would the state and town consider eliminating the ability of cars to turn left at North Main mid-block and eliminate the ability of cars to go straight across mid-block, Whole Foods to Marshall's block? Dangerous. So Sarah, I'm guessing you're talking about vehicles maybe entering and exiting some of the parking lots, including Whole Foods and Marshalls, as you indicate. We've definitely heard many concerns about the numerous access points out here. We could certainly have those conversations with the town and discuss any opportunities for cleaning up or minimizing movements and conflict points at some of these driveways. Thanks. Got another question here. An anonymous attendee says, do you foresee additional traffic on Starkville Road with motorists trying to avoid the entire intersection? And if so, will additional accommodations made for the older residents in that area? So yeah, we've actually been having some discussions internally about Starkville Road and whether or not there's any opportunities there to help any slow down any bypassing vehicles that are running through there. We do recognize that there is that elderly housing complex to the north of 218. And Yeah, I think moving forward, we're probably going to have some discussions with the town to see if there is anything we can do on Starkle. One option, a resident threw out to me the other day was maybe adding some speed tables on Starkle to try to slow traffic down. So yeah, for sure, we're going to be having some discussions with the town moving forward to see what we can do to slow traffic down on Starkle. If that is something that would be appropriate to include with this project. There are many crosswalks on Starkle Road, and we understand a lot of residents use that area. So yeah, we'll definitely be looking at that moving forward. Next question here is asking if we could point out which properties might be impacted. Andrew, maybe you could, this slide might work. Maybe you could kind of use your pointer and just kind of highlight the impacts we do have to private properties are very minor in nature, like we kind of talked about earlier.
Yeah,
impacts from sidewalks are going.
Right. So, and that's why we didn't show any line work for possible easements on these slides. As we kind of fine tune them, they're subject to change. They'd be very small, as we do sidewalk work around the corner, any type of grading. We might need to get small sloping easement, but we don't anticipate any large impacts to a property. The largest one is on this corner, and we're backing the back of the sidewalk up just a little bit. So we like to have our sidewalk contained within our right of way. So we have proposed a small acquisition on this property here. But again, it's not going to impact. There's a sign here for the gas station there. We don't plan on impacting any of that. And that, like I said, that's the biggest impact. Everything else will be pretty minor relative to that.
No. All right, good. Our next question says, has any thought been given to eliminating right on red in all directions to make it safer for pedestrians and cyclists? Yeah, we've definitely been discussing that. And one of the considerations we also look at for rights on red is sight line for those drivers. So Colin, we've been having some conversations about that internally. I think it's something that we're still kind of developing and looking at. Where do you stand? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so as the project progresses, we'll need to take into account, sight lines, and any time of day can motorists safely make a right turn on red from any of the approaches. So that'll be, one of our standard things we'll do, and if needed, the right turn on red sign could be posted. But the additional thing we're looking to, and I kind of alluded to it, is during a concurrent pedestrian phase. So say somebody is crossing North Main Street, Route 44, also has the through movements going. If somebody going on North Main Street southbound trying to take a right turn, we would have a overhead illuminated no turn on red sign come on only during when the pedestrian phase is active. So it's not something that, because unfortunately, I hate to say it, when we have our no turn on red, just the regular signs, motorists tend to ignore them and turn on red regardless. So the thought is hopefully the activated sign that only comes on during the pedestrian crossing really grabs motorists' attention. There's just that extra cue that they shouldn't be turning right on red, and there's going to be somebody crossing they need to look out for. So it's the direction we're heading. We want to investigate. It's some towns in the state have done that. We haven't done it in any of our state-owned signals yet, but we're certainly looking forward to implementing some of that in the future for this project and possibly others as well.
Thanks, Colin. All right, next question we have is, does the department expect the drainage design to solve existing flooding in the intersection, and to what storm frequency? Andrew, maybe you could speak to that a little bit in terms of the drainage design.
Yeah, we haven't taken an in-depth look at the analysis yet, but the goal will be to increase the efficiency of the system. We're going to look at an existing analysis of the area, how it's operating now, and then we'll use that to design our proposed. You asked about frequency for our typical design storm is 10 years, I believe, off the top of my head. And if any of these corners, if any of the catch basins are kind of in low spots where they might see some water coming from each direction, we bump that up even higher. I believe off the top of my head again, I think that's a 50-year storm. So yeah, we're going to take a good hard look at the analysis and certainly try to improve conditions.
Oh, great. Next comment here from Dean: is the town rethinking its busing radius to reduce the volume of pedestrian traffic? We're not going to have an answer for you, Dean, but we can certainly relay this question to the town and get an answer from them, and we'll look forward to that in the reporter meeting for this. Well, thanks for the question. The next question here is, what is the process for approving the final design? And basically what we'll be looking to do is, refine the design as we move along based on some of the comments we're receiving today and further stakeholder outreach. And we'll be looking for support from the town. If we get to a place where we feel like we've kind of updated our design to a level where it's satisfies some of the concerns and issues in the area. And then we would move forward with approval from our management within the DOT. And that's basically like the high level version of how we get to final design. Thanks, Ben. All right, next question we have is, the most dangerous aspect of this entire area is moving out of the Whole Foods parking lot and the Marshall one. Speeding is the most important factor here. A crosswalk near here would benefit the pedestrians trying to get from one parking lot to the other, and also give more possibilities for safe exit from these lots when you are in a vehicle. Yeah, I think that's a great observation and comment, Stephanie. I think moving forward, we'll definitely be having some conversations with the town to see what we can do at that major intersection, really, at the Whole Foods. Okay, next comment here is, there's an issue on the southwest corner near B of A, exiting onto Route 44, onto the left only lane if you don't want to take a left turn. Any chance of correcting this? Let me just try to see if I understand what you're saying here a bit. Andrew, let me see where B of A is. It's saying southwest corner. There's a lot of, I wasn't sure there was a Bank of America in there or not, but I'm not sure if he's talking about, he must be talking about getting onto 44 over near Smith Road, maybe.
That could be
or that other, or that, I guess there's that other way to get out. Yeah, close to the intersection. Right.
Just wonder if maybe you kind of get trapped in that right turn lane, because where that driveway exits there, you kind of almost have to get into that lane. It'd be tough to move over to the 3 lanes.
Right.
Yeah, so something we can look at, but yeah, that does look like it would be a tough move to get to the left turn lane. Maybe is what he's trying to say. So and the only, unfortunately, it's more length, but the only good thing is, you have the ability to keep circulating through the parking lot and take a longer route to get there. So we certainly had time to your trip, but it might be an easier movement. But I think, I'm sure we could take a look too if there's anything else we could do under this project to help get people out of that driveway next to the Bank of America.
Okay, next question we have is, has the state reviewed technology to illuminate the crosswalk when a pedestrian crossing button is pressed? This could provide additional safety as drivers would know someone is in the crosswalk. And I'm not familiar with us as a state doing any kind of illuminated pavement yet at this point. Is that something we're looking at, Alan? Is that an option, or?
Well, not currently. Years ago, we had some pilots of that, and unfortunately, technology wasn't there with what we had at the time, and then our snowplow and salt operations the winter, because the in roadway lighting didn't last very long. But it's certainly pedestrian safety is one of the things we keep looking into. So if I wouldn't be surprised someday in the future we do get there, but it's the fight that we have in some of the other northern states is the snow plowing and the salt that makes it tough to put stuff in the pavement for the better illumination.
Next comment we have says the law about PEDs in the crosswalk is yield to PEDs in the crosswalk. PED should be educated not to enter the crosswalk if it means a car must stop. PED should be responsibly safe for themselves. Yeah, thanks for the comment, Suzanne. Unfortunately, it's difficult to educate the entire public and everyone using this area. So we just try to implement whatever we can to make it a safe environment for everyone. All right. Next comment we have is to spend this much money on the project and not to have any improvement in the safety of bicycles would be ridiculous. Trying to cross the intersection heading southbound on Route 218 is very tight squeeze and very dangerous into North Main. Perhaps some sidewalk work could be taken from the west side of North Main. And this comment from West Hartford. Yeah, no, I agree. I think we do definitely need to look into some options. We might have some opportunities where we can widen the sidewalk of the roadway and then make some more space for bikes out there. So definitely something I'll be looking into moving forward. Thanks. Next question we kind of hit on earlier. It's, will your new lights have cameras on them? And I think Colin covered this pretty well. We will have detection cameras detecting traffic at the signals, allowing the signal phasing to function appropriately. Next comment we have is the balance seems heavily tilted to cars. Why not drop the right turn only lanes to create space for bicycles? Yeah, I mean it's something we could look into. What we found that if we drop the right turn lanes we have, with our models, it creates pretty considerable backups and congestion. That was your analysis and look at this, right, Colin? Especially that I think that right turn from 44 and then North Main Street, there's quite a few vehicles making that maneuver. Eliminating that would probably result in pretty significant traffic backup.
Yeah, correct.
Next question we have is what ADA upgrades are planned for pedestrian signals? Colin, can you speak to that and what our latest pedestrian signals include for ADA?
So yeah, just knowing from being out at the intersection, it's definitely not up to the latest and greatest. So we would have new ADA compliant curb ramps. Make sure the buttons are within the appropriate reach ranges. The buttons themselves would be ADA compliant, and they would have the tactile feedback and the speech messages or the custom tone. So basically bring the entire intersection up to full ADA compliance.
All right, next question is why do we need to acquire a section of a gas station if you only plan on making a vegetated patch there? Could you not ask the station owner to do this or allow the private to do it? Andrew, maybe you could speak to that a little, the specifics of what we're looking to do in that area.
Yeah, the land acquisition is mostly the thing driving that is we want to own the sidewalk if we're having people, pedestrians use a state sidewalk. We want to have the full right of way and not have any liability fall on this owner. So it's a very small acquisition, and this shape, just kind of shows that there may be grading impacts if there's a slight grade change at the back of the sidewalk. So that's all it's trying to signify is potential impacts. And then the acquisition itself would be to accommodate that minor pushback on the back of the sidewalk.
Right, okay. What is going on at the northeast side of North Main Street at the corner? What stops cars from hugging that curb when turning right instead of staying in the designated lane before turning right on Albany Ave? I think this individual might be speaking to like that wider shoulder in that area. And you know, one of the reasons that shoulder is so wide in that area is to accommodate large vehicles like trucks and buses. Their rear wheels will need to track far over to the right there to make that maneuver. And yeah, there likely will be some vehicles cutting that corner tight. I don't know that we're going to implement anything to prevent them from doing that, but we could look at options like coloring the pavement differently or introducing some line striping. Does that sound about right, Colin?
Yes, and also I know I want to give the town of West Hartford credit too, because in our previous meetings they brought that up too. So I think it's something we'll look into a little bit more, just to kind of, you know, keep cars out of that space because they don't need to be there, but allow trucks to use it because they'll need to.
All right, next comment we have is modern traffic roundabouts move a higher volume of traffic more safely than any other intersection configuration. Roundabouts can be outfitted with bike lanes and pedestrian crossing lanes. Why aren't roundabouts more widely implemented in C3? Are there any reasons why a roundabout could not be used here? Thank you. And so there's a couple questions in there. You know, the first question is why aren't roundabouts more widely implemented in CT? I mean, from the department's perspective, we are trying to implement them as often and frequently as we can. We've done many roundabout projects over the years. Some have gotten awards, and we have many in design right now. They do function really well in certain scenarios where we have the appropriate levels of traffic and enough room to put them in. And I think that leads me to the answer for the second part of your question is why can we do a roundabout here? And it really boils down to just a high level of traffic. Roundabouts typically don't do well with very high levels of traffic like we have in this situation. It forces you into oftentimes a multi-lane roundabout, which can create additional complexities and difficulties and confusion for the drivers. In this particular case, because the volumes are just so high, it just wasn't a feasible spot for us to put a roundabout. But we appreciate the comment. Thanks, John. Next question we have is, other cities I've been to, there is a bike box at the front of the cars and a separate green light just for cyclists to give them a head start from the cars. Can this be considered here? Colin, are you familiar with this bike box? I'm assuming it's like a painted area.
Yes, it's something that, you know, maybe we'll take a second look into as actually down the road on Route 44 over into Hartford. It was a few years back now, but the department had a project on Route 44 through there. And I know there's at least one bike box we put on the intersection of Route 44 and Homestead Avenue. And so it does give a little bit of a nice protective space for cyclists. So it's something that we could certainly consider and work with the town as well and look into.
Next comment is bike accommodation is important to enable people to do errands by bike. Thank you. Okay, thanks, Sarah. I appreciate the comment. Next comment we have is, why is there so much concrete versus greenery on the southeast corner? And I think that just kind of boils down to this kind of being an early schematic that we put together. We have had conversations with the town about possibly implementing some kind of landscaping in there. Andrew, do you have anything to add to that? I think we've had some discussions.
Yeah, not really. I think you kind of got it. We definitely did, in speaking with the town, identify that area as a potential spot to implement something to break up the concrete. You know, it's certainly something we do want to explore with the town and our landscaping unit and see what we can do on this corner and see if there's any other areas throughout the project.
Right. Okay, great. Next comment is, since DOT is pretty thorough, you know, on Starkville Road, there's elderly housing. Some of them go to Big Y with their shopping carts, so are only crossing Starkville Road. The number are headed to the Crown Market on the southeast side of Albany. One should be sensitive that the crossing times of the pedestrian walk signs need to be timed for slow walkers. We now sometimes rely on the small traffic islands to make it across in several hops. And yeah, I think this goes back to, you know, our pedestrian timing standards. And Colin, could you just maybe add a little bit more about, you know, how we time those pedestrian crossings to accommodate all users?
Yeah, so we'll look at all the crossings and ensure, depending on the length of the crossing, make sure we give plenty of adequate time for anybody to get from curb ramp to curb ramp, and then give even extra clearance time to you know, just as a buffer before, you know, we move on to the next phase. But that's something we definitely will do our homework on and make sure those are appropriate.
Okay. Next comment we have says, no questions. I support the proposed revisions. Existing conditions are dangerous to pedestrians and bicyclists. Shorter crossing distance equals pedestrian bicyclists can cross the street faster, and elimination of the channelized right turn lanes removes a conflict point between pedestrians and right turn cars that ignore the traffic signal. Thanks a lot for your comment. Appreciate the support. All right, next. It says, has the idea been considered of placing overhead directional signage well ahead of the intersection to expedite cars getting into the correct lanes, to decrease the changing of lanes close to the intersection? Yeah, Kyle, can you speak to that a little?
So it's not something we've considered at the moment. You know, you could certainly take a look into, and as a part of the project, we'll certainly definitely take a fresh look at it. There's our regular signing, and you know, something I've noticed, it's just there's not a lot of space to put the signs. So I'm sure we could, when we go through the project, get them in better locations and help get motorists in the right lane in advance. That's a very important thing that we try to do. The overhead signs, you know, they're good, but then it also, you know, it also kind of makes it more of a higher speed freeway type of environment. So I'm a little bit cautious to go there just yet, but it's something we could look into.
That sounds good. Another question we have here is, what is the substance represented by the gray areas on the plan where the right turn lanes are now? And I believe this individual is alluding to the sidewalks shown in gray. And as we kind of spoke to earlier, some of them are shown pretty wide. We might have some opportunities to incorporate some plantings in there. And also, you know, we kind of show them as gray just because that is our standard treatment for sidewalks, but we will certainly be in discussions with the town and the local communities to see if there is a different preferred treatment, color, stamped concrete, something like that, that the town would rather have instead of gray. But we basically did this for display purposes. Thanks for the question. All right, we've got a few more questions here to go. Sarah just mentioned that the no right on red signs when pedestrian light is illuminated is what she was talking about. It would be a great addition. Thanks for your responsiveness to all the questions. Thank you, Sarah. I think Bert had a correction to his statement, but I think we handled that with the right turns from Bank of America. Our next comment is from Jeff. I think this is going back to the illuminated crosswalks. He's saying maybe not LEDs in the walkway, but spotlight on the pole that turns on when pedestrian is crossing. Andrew, maybe you could speak to that and kind of how we approach intersection illumination. I don't know that we have an opportunity to have something come on as a spotlight.
No, and I think what our illumination department would look at is just making sure all the crosswalks are adequately lit at night. And they do that with either with lighting off of like the mast arms or looking at the existing lamp plan. There are some existing street lights in this area. So our unit would look at both of those and make sure that our new proposed crosswalks are adequately lit. And I'm not aware of any additional lighting that we would implement when the crossing phase is activated.
Right. Okay. Next comment we have is from Stephanie again. It says, "Thank you all for this presentation and your thorough and respectful responses. I appreciate the professionalism and attention to the stakeholders' views and concerns. Thanks a lot, Stephanie. We appreciate all your input and coming tonight. Thank you." So we have a few more questions here. A couple more have come in. This one reads, "From westbound on 44 turning right onto North Main, please show with arrow which lane or area is considered the shoulder." Well, it is kind of cut off here a little because I'd say, well, there you go. Yeah, so I think in this area, this is one of the areas where the shoulder is pretty tight right now due to our travel lane widths.
Yeah, I would say this whole side of 44 is certainly our tightest area as we approach the intersection.
Yeah, so the shoulder space would be the area between that right turn lane and the edge of the road or the curb line. So in between the right turn lane and the sidewalk. So I think it's about a 2-foot space there, that black line in between those areas. Right.
Right,
Yes,
right.
It is pretty tight right there. You know, that would be an area where we expect bicyclists to get onto the sidewalk to smell their brakes unless they're comfortable enough to take a lane.
Right. There's minor shoulder width improvements here, but like I said, the roadway width approaching that intersection does get pretty narrow.
Next question we have is, if it were decided to keep the refuge islands instead of the plan being presented tonight, would it be feasible to bring them up to code? Andrew, maybe you could speak to that a little. We don't really have a specific code for islands. We do have some standards and stuff we follow for curbing and ramps and stuff like that.
Right. So we would just want to make sure that we'd be able to fit ADA compliant pedestrian ramps, all the new pedestrian signal equipment. To do that, we'd be increasing the island size, which, that would also complicate lane configurations, and then it would also still kind of make it difficult for pedestrians to cross at the same time. So I think that's why that option was kind of eliminated early on, because to kind of fit all that in, you do kind of have to beef them up. And that still makes the lane arrangements hard, excuse me.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. All right, we have one more question here from Jeff, and this is going back to his comment earlier about the overhead warning signs, saying maybe we could do painted on road signs near Sims Road, people going down the hill as they come down 44 from the west, probably going faster than the speed limit, which is why West Hartford PD parking on the block just the west of Staples, so they need more time to get in the correct lane. Yeah, so I think that might be another option, something we could look into, if we could add some markings to the lanes, alert people ahead of time to get in the correct lane. Maybe help with confusion as people are entering the intersection for sure. Something we'll look at and consider. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, I appreciate the local knowledge there in that particular direction and issues. That's definitely helps us. If anyone else has other concerns, if not tonight, if they send them in, it definitely we can take a closer look at it as we move through design.
I think we'll, give it a few more moments here in case we get any more questions in. But maybe I could just start with some closing remarks. If anyone has any additional comments or questions, please feel free to use that email address or that phone call, get those comments in. And, please let us know if you have any interest in us coming out, meeting with you. We're willing to come out and meet on site, have discussions with any stakeholder groups. So yeah, get these comments in. We appreciate the turnout tonight. We had about 60 or so people at one point, which is a great turnout. And we appreciate everyone coming out and sharing their comments and questions with us. And I'm not seeing any other questions coming in here. Andrew, you have any other additional closing remarks, or we're gonna get ready to end this thing, right?
Yeah, I think that's it. I think you already kind of touched on it. If you need anything, please reach out. All our project information was in that chat. Again, go to our project website. It has all the contact information. That was just Google CTDOT 155-176 project. It'll pop up, or it's portal.ct.gov/West Hartford 155-176. I think that covers it all. So
All right,
thank
great.
you all for coming.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. We appreciate all the comments and questions, and we definitely look forward to ongoing coordination with everyone. Thanks again.
All right, end it.